on the backside.
Wow, so many words. Okay, our word today is analogy. And I am moving forward even if you're not with me. So an analogy is a comparison between two things. But it's not just a metaphor, it's for the purpose of explanation or clarification. So a comparison between two things, typically for the purpose of explanation or clarification. So a metaphor is also a comparison between two things, so it can get a little bit confusing. An analogy though, or let's start with a metaphor. A metaphor is usually used to like illustrate a concept. So it will offer some sort of like, I don't know, I don't like this particular metaphor, but deeper understanding of an idea. So for example, in the prison door, it was like illustrating the concept of like man-made creation imposing onto nature, right? And it uses this symbol or this metaphor to do that. An analogy, though, has the purpose of being for an argument. So you usually see analogies more in nonfiction texts rather than fiction texts. So, for example, an analogy that you might have liked, and I'm going to check off your annotations here in a second, but an analogy you might have liked was in Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, where it calls people spiders. So flip open to that.
I lost like 7 brain cells trying to read all that. Like all the old English tore apart my brain.
Oh, okay.
I was really dying. I kept reading it out loud to my family. I was like, this is what I'm reading for class today. They tell me I'm going to hell.
The Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God one.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so you're open to Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, right? There's two speeches that you were annotating. This is the second one. So I forgot to tell you guys about poetry. Okay, I'll do it next time. All right, so in this speech, Jonathan Edwards, here's the context for it. There was a congregation, I can't remember exactly where, let's just say Massachusetts, some Puritan congregation. And they felt like their parishioners, their members were getting too lax in their faith, and that they were relying too much on sort of repentance and the kindness of God. Yeah.
So I think this is also part of it's something called the Great Awakening.
Yes.
Which is like a religious reaction to the Enlightenment, where all these scientific advancements were made, and so people started getting a lot more secular, and so they just kind of wanted to get people back into religion.
Right. Yeah, it's the first Great Awakening is what it's a part of, which like the second Great Awakening was more about like personal responsibility and love and so on. The first Great Awakening, like you said, is all about just like harshly dragging people back into the fold, you know? And this one, he uses the spider analogy a couple times. He says that the only thing keeping you out of hell is a spider's web. But then on the second to last paragraph, this is the analogy we're going to look at. He says, the God that holds you over the pit of hell, much as one holds a spider or some loathsome insect over the fire, abhors you. Do you know what the word abhors means? It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, Alistair.
It's like the opposite of
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like an adores. It's an emotion that's even stronger than hate. So it is saying God is like, it's like he hates you, but he's also like disgusted by you. It's like a combination of both. So he abhors you and is dreadfully provoked. You have provoked him. His wrath towards you burns like fire. He looks upon you as worthy of nothing else but to be cast into the fire. Like it is so dark. So you are this spider in God's hand that he is holding over the flames of hell, right? we've done a ton of work now thinking about metaphors. This one specifically is, like Bjorn said, like trying to bring people back to God, but through fear. So there's an argumentative purpose to this one. So instead of doing it together on the board like we have been doing, I'm going to have you just with the person next to you. Wait, I don't know. Oh, is this Callie? Okay. Okay, so we have been doing this on the board, you know, when we're thinking about snakes and we're thinking about doors and prisons and so on. I want you together to discuss what the effect of this particular example is. Actually, let's get the example written down first. The example is the God that holds you over the pit of hell, much as one holds a spider. ... And you'll know what goes on. Oh, imagine being in church that day. He is made drunk with your blood. No, that'd be it for me.
Just go move away.
All right, so now you've got that written down. Talk with the person next to you about the effect of that analogy. Why do you think Edwards uses this spider analogy for to compare to people? Okay.
Nobody likes them. They deserve to die. If you saw spider, you would kill it. And God wants to kill you. It's terrible.
Like, yeah, it's like they need to just get rid of like all the things like unnecessary. She had to like say yes.
Yeah, mine is just like. Yeah, I was already like in the office. And I'm like, what? Freaking heck.
This made me angry. I wrote a lot about it.
It made you angry?
Yeah. I said, when they try to stay safe,
I know.
It's like the Lord's practice.
This is how God makes it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Great.
Nothing is like just when I spend time. I'll try to get me to do it. I was like, God, I don't do anything so you're not. Maybe I will.
Yeah. Like how I feel. Somebody kill it. Like to use them as only for
I did nothing. I'll do it.
No,
Wait, were you like
We know the whole story. Yeah, we had that last time. You seem very excited. Did you get the email? We had this. Yeah, that I've been stuck on. You're so excited about that. Sounds very cool. That's why I was like, I'm having a class because I know what I'm doing.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see.
Right. I wrote down the word begrudgingly. I spelled it right. What the heck? You are helpless and beyond
No, no. Okay, good.
God save you from help us so begrudgingly. For help us.
You're so good.
That was my animation.
Oh my God.
Okay,
Okay, did you get a bunch of stuff written down under effects?
yes.
Then you can go ahead and put that away.
Should we try the Instagram things?
Turn in with.
The Instagram things?
If you submitted a picture online, then, okay, then yeah, turn it.
I feel like I turned mine in.
Like this.
See a lid to this pen near the.
I feel like I just. I do not. I wish I never did.
Yes. Okay, if you turned in your nature paragraph as a physical copy, you have a folder over here where I've handed it back to you. So this time I'm handing back anything physical that you turn in. So I've got like the Callie and Laura and Olivia and Elsa's got a folder, but some of you get and Josie. So come and grab your stuff out of here. So I gave you lots of feedback on those nature paragraphs. Normally, on a single paragraph like that, I don't go overboard like that with the comments. Like I gave you a lot of feedback for one paragraph. But the purpose was to kind of show you the grading, what goes into grading the AP essays that you'll be doing starting next time. You've got a short essay. I know.
Hey.
So I wanted to show you like, you know, how harsh of a grader I was or what I'm looking for. It's the reason why I allow you to do as many rewrites as you want is so that you can, you know, get a really good grade and get the grade that you want. This one, it's only out of 10 points. A lot of stuff in this class is out of 35 or 50 points. So it's not a make or break your grade type thing. But you can kind of see where it was in terms of like what I'm looking for in your writing. Does everyone know how to see feedback on Canvas? I use the individual comments function, and so you have to go into submission details to see the individual comments if you turned it in as a Google Doc. If you don't know where to find that, like if you open that Canvas assignment and you see you're like, she didn't give me any feedback, then someone next to you will know how to do it, or I can show you, although I don't see that version of Canvas very often. It's the student side. Does anyone have any questions about that? If you want to rewrite that paragraph because you're a perfectionist and you want to get full points, you can do it up until tomorrow at midnight because that's the end of the month.
Oh. August is over.
August is over, yeah.
Hang on.
So that also applies to multiple choice corrections. Those will be due by tomorrow night. Any summer homework stuff, including if you weren't aware that we had summer homework because you transferred or something like that, all of that is due by tomorrow by midnight. Are there any questions about that deadline?
Is it on our grade yet?
I think everything's up to date on your grades right now. Oh, unless you did the summer paragraphs late. I haven't got to those.
Okay, I did those on time. I'm so proud of myself. As you should.
Okay, any questions? All right, then open up. Let's get started on this. Let's open up to John Winthrop's A Model of Christian Charity.
This guy had some ideas.
He was emotional.
I feel like he came from a better place. He was a little more put together.
Yeah.
A little more self-confident.
Oh, let's get quiet in here now. Shh. Elsa? Nat, do you know how to show her the submission details? Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I know that, so it's probably a different way than other teachers do it. All right, so A Model of Christian Charity, we can talk about those paragraphs and anything like that if you want to stay after class to talk to me about it, but for now we need to get to this part. So this speech that he gave, he wrote it down and gave it as a speech on the ship. It is full of words that are synonymous with the word connection, or words that are about how people are connected to each other. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes is all to scan through that speech and circle any word that has to do with the idea of connection. Trying to get as many as you can. A Model of Christian Charity.
Connection.
So you're scanning the article and circling any words that have to do with connections. Mm-hmm. Yes. You did. I just left it on your desk. Okay, that's long enough. Tell me the words that you found that mean the similar things to connection.
Together.
Together, good one. Yeah, Josie, what was it?
Bond.
Bond. Lucy? Solidarity. Bjorn? Ligament, good one. Audrey?
Marriage.
Marriage. Kaylee?
Conformity.
Conformity, good one. Kelly? United. Lexi?
Common good.
Common good. Awesome. Elsa? Knit, good one. That was yours. Yeah, Claire. Love. Sabina? Community. Luke? Brotherly affection. Good. Okay, you are getting the idea. This whole Speech is about how people are knit together, how people achieve this kind of solidarity in a community. So here they are on the ship, group of Puritans headed for the New World. They have to figure out how they're going to set up their society. So it's like this pivotal moment where they get to decide what their government's going to be like, how they're going to kind of interact with religious authority, what they're going to do about people when they mess up, and what they're going to do to celebrate people. Like, how are we going to live together as a community? And what they come up with is in the second to last paragraph on the first page, the one that starts the definition which. So it says the definition which the scripture gives us of love, that's a typo, is this: love is the bond of perfection. First, it is a bond or ligament. Secondly, it makes the work perfect. There is nobody but consists of parts, and that which knits these parts together gives the body its perfection, is love. I think that should say it's love. I'm so sorry for all the typos. I didn't type it. I just stole it. So that sentence, though, that starts, there is nobody but consists of parts, you could also look at that and say there is no body that consists of parts. And what Winthrop is doing here is he is describing what's called the body politic. He's not using that term. People right after him will start using that term, body politic, but that is what he is describing. So he's got this idea of like a body. Oh, it's beautiful. And he's decided that there are certain places to put people in this metaphorical body. This is why we talked about an analogy. This metaphorical body to make the system work as a whole. And what it will mean is that there will be a kind of social contract. Some people are going to have to give up some rights and privileges in order to make this body work together. And well, everyone's going to have to give up something. And then once they give that up and they all agree on that, it will afford them a certain amount of safety and a certain amount of freedom together. And he says that different people belong in different places. So the people he talks about the rich and the poor. He talks about government, so like government officials. He talks about clergy, so like religious officials. We're going to add to the body politic because this is the body politic that Puritans kind of built their culture on. So I also want to know, like, okay, well, there's sinners like Hester, where do they go? I want to know where the doctors go, like Chillingworth. Because the doctors and the rich were not the same people like they are now. Who else do I want to know about? I want to know about the children of sinners. I want to know about witches. Because there's a witch in the book. Are there any other groups of people in the book? Any other social groups of people? Sailors? Are there sailors? That'd be fun. Okay, sailors. Right. Yeah.
Native Americans.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've got this like list of these groups of people that are belonging to a society according to John Winthrop and according to the Scarlet Letter. What you are going to do in groups of about 4 or so. We usually make the groups, but I feel like this class could do it on their own. Yeah, about groups of 4 or so. So if it's 4 to 5, 3 to 5, you are going to draw a body politic. You're going to draw a body, and you're going to label the parts of the body. Now, this is just an idea. Oh, yeah, he also talks about God and Christ being part of the body. So this is just an idea of where to start. If you think of other groups and where they belong on the body politic, you can get very creative. You can add abs and eyes and hair, whatever you want to do. You're trying to apply his ideas from the model of Christian charity to what an ideal body politic would look like. So again, this isn't a body politic based on reality. It's an ideal version of it. This is like before they even get there, what would he want the society to look like? Okay, you only need to draw one of these per group. Kaylee?
What if you wouldn't want a certain group of people to be?
You gotta show that in your body politic, show how they're gonna not be part of it. Yeah.
I'm confused.
Yes, okay, so Lexi asked a good clarifying question. Sorry. she's like, what am I supposed to do with this? So you're basically labeling your own body politic. You're drawing your own body politic and then labeling it according to the ideal body politic that Winthrop comes up with. So like, where on the body do the sinners go? Where does God go on the body? Is he the brain? Is he the heart? Is he the toe? What is he? Does that make sense? Okay, so you're gonna work in groups of 3 to 5. I'll give you 10 seconds to find your group, and if you don't find your group, that's okay. I will assign you a group. Okay, raise your hand. Does someone not have a group yet? Wow, you guys did so well. Okay, 1 paper per group, but you are gonna turn it in. You're gonna turn it in, so do it a separate paper. Okay, so you at home, you're just gonna do this one on your own, obviously. So let's try and find some of the similarities. As I am looking, it seems like everybody, for the most part, not these two. So let's look at just these. You guys have, no, it's okay. I'm just looking for similarity. You guys have God somewhere in the upper parts, above the neck. So you've got God sort of like above it all, and it looks like inspiring. Why the halo for this team?
Because that is religious.
Because that is religious. Good. Good. So I think what I like about that too is it's like signifying that the body itself is religious, right? The reason that we have halos to mark like when something is religious, it's like this outward sign that somebody's like an angel of God. So it works. Yeah, Josie.
Also, like, even it like it's technically a part of the body, but it's not super like in contact or direct with the body. So it's still like connected with it, but it's not like. Does it make sense?
Yes, good. So God's like kind of like informing the body, but God isn't a part of society, like actually.
That's good.
All right, and then let's see. Oh, these guys have heart of God too. So the other people put like maybe is this the brain?
Yeah,
Why the brain?
because it dictates how they want us to think. Because if God like makes them to think and therefore act in that certain way.
Okay, good. So it's like if the brain is like I don't know anatomy very well, so this is a fun activity for me, but like the brain is the control center of the body and kind of controlling everything. The idea is that the brain would control how the body functions and moves, right? So then the brain is going to have a connection to all parts of the body. So for those of you guys who put God as the heart, why did you put God as the heart? Yeah, Audrey?
Because God like runs the whole body, so it's like it's this internal thing like you can't see from the outside, but it's like in control of everything.
Okay, but not like the brain, right? Yeah. So what's the difference between putting him as the heart or putting him as the brain then, Luke?
Because I feel like in this ideal world, like the heart should be fueling the body. So when we put God there, it's kind of like fueling the body.
Okay, good. What I like about God as the heart too in some of these is that it's like not a rational place. Like God isn't acting in a way that is like we're clear on all of the reasons for it. It's more like a functioning part of it. It's like it's just with the beating of your heart, and when God goes away, then the body goes away kind of just automatically. I know that works with the brain too, but somehow that feels a little bit better. Okay, so let's then talk about the bottom half here. Well, let's look at the rich first. So we've got rich as the chest area. Where are the rich here? Do we have the rich in this one?
It's probably behind the bangs.
He's very emo. Oh, it's the hair? Okay. Okay, cool. Where's rich is the neck. What does that say? Oh, government. Okay. Gout. I thought it said gout. The rich is the brain. The rich is the shoulders. Okay, so it looks like for the most part, the biceps. For the most part, the rich the rich are the upper half of the body for you guys? Why did you feel like the rich needed to be in the upper half according to Linda? Gracie?
So for us,
Yeah.
the government kind of sits on top of the rich because it's like fueled by money, kind of.
Yeah.
So it's just like, sits on. the
Okay,
neck.
I like that. So if you cut off right there, there's nothing, like, the government doesn't really have any sort of authority at all. It's the rich that are providing the government with that authority. Yeah, I like that. Yes. Any other reason why the rich is in the top half, Elsa?
We did the chest because they're so central to everything that happens,
Yeah.
and they're so, they need to do them, so it's like the chest, not like one of the other, like the arms or attached from the body, so it's.
Okay, good. So you can't be severed from the rich people in your society because they're sort of like the ones that are running the whole thing. But Yeah. okay, good. So I think that Winthrop would agree that there's like something in that the rich would be kind of in the upper half, even though let's then compare that to the poor, because a lot of you guys have the poor then in the bottom half, lots of legs for poor, knees maybe, upper thighs, upper thighs, feet. Okay, yeah. So we're like in the legs or the feet for all the poor. Why are you guys putting those lower to the ground then? Kaylee?
Okay, so they're kind of what the society like stands on top of the ones that
Yeah.
stuff like goes upwards kind of, and they also have the least kind of say within the government, so like that's why they're the furthest.
So they're the furthest away from the government, right? And yet they're the thing that is upholding the body. Yeah, you think about arms versus legs, and this is going to sound a little bit ableist, but I am just working with the metaphor that the body politic is. You could have an arm cut off and your society could work pretty well. Like you get, one tech sector, this is the tech sector, you get the arm cut off, like it's not as good. We don't have as nice of iPhones, but like it can survive. But if you cut off the poor, the body becomes it's much harder for the body to function. So the poor are the things that like are keeping the body upright, keeping the body moving, keeping it like going in a direction. Aaliyah?
So when our legs are like the thighs, you look down on them like God and the rich and the religious officials, you have to look down to see your legs. So they really look down.
Okay, good. And there's like a way that you kind of lose track of the importance of your legs and your toes and your feet too. We have this kind of obsession with hierarchy metaphors, that something that is higher up or closer to the clouds or whatever, that is like seen as sort of more valuable or more like godly or more divine. We have all these images of upright man as being this like amazing thing, but there's this great essay by a guy named George Bataille. Doesn't matter who wrote it, but he wrote about the big toe, and he was arguing that it's actually the big toe that's the most important part of the human. It's not the head, it's the big toe that keeps us standing up and keeps us grounded to the ground. And he's got all this like argumentation about why the big toe is this amazing thing. And yeah, we look at it and it's kind of gross and it's like wallowing in the dirt and whatever, but without it, we don't have our balance anymore. We can't have that upright nature. Okay, let's talk about more of the fun ones here. So so the rest is kind of like all over the place. So let's talk about the witches. Witches as hair. I think witches and sinners kind of go together here. So like the witches as hair, the witches as hands, witches as a virus, that's fun. Witches as like toes.
That's supposed to be the nose up there.
Oh, the witches are the nose? Interesting. Okay, so why, just someone who has witches up here, what was your rationale for it? Elsa? Yeah, wild and uncontrollable. I really like that. When is your hair not you anymore? It's dead, right? Like it's not living cells. And so is this hair, like, is this a part of me? And if I were to pluck one out, is that still me? Like, can I just like leave pieces of me all over the place? Or like, when does it stop being me? And that's one of the ideas about it being uncontrollable that I really like. It's like somehow attached to the body and yet outside the body at the same time. And something that you don't always have full control over. Yeah. Zoe.
We put it as the nose because like
you smell a lot of things and like witches overanalyze things, and so people would think they're like crazy for knowing so much, but in reality your nose like can smell so much.
Oh, interesting. So it seems like a little extra sensory, like superstitious. I like that. Brennan? Yeah. Kaylee? Oh, you guys, you can always just go to the bathroom. You do not have to ask me to go. We can just go.
So we thought witches as a virus because
Yes.
viruses are something that are like kind of parasitical. So they're taking the resources of the society and they're not giving anything back. And
Yes.
they also spread their witchcraft ideas throughout all of the people.
All right, good. Let me ask you this. Why are the witches viruses and the sinners excrement?
A lot of sinners, they're like hiding what they are.
Uh-huh.
Witches kind of spread it out through.
Okay, got it. Witches want to replicate and sinners are kind of like shoved to the side. We don't want to think about them. Yeah.
You know what she said about the witches being the nose? I was just thinking about like, have you seen that meme where it's like, you can't date a witch because they'll smell it. They'll either feel it, smell it, or feel it, or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Like witches will smell if you're cheating on them.
Oh, this is fascinating. Okay. So not that I believe in witches, but this idea is really fascinating because this suggests that the witches can get information from the outside world, right? They can get information from nature and in ways that this religious government and officials, they can't get necessarily. So they're like sensing things that other people can't sense, and that's what kind of makes them a threat. They've got some sort of connection to the outside world that the rest of the body doesn't. Yeah, Audrey.
Also with the nose, I was thinking like, you know how like you can't see your nose because your like brain like blocks it out unless
Yeah.
like you look at it like you go cross-eyed. So
Yeah.
you have to look for it. So it's like they kind of like blend into the society until you're like, hang on, I'm looking at it and there's a witch.
I like that. I like that a lot. It's like up to the society to find itself. Yeah. All right. Here's, I actually do want to focus on this one. Usually I make the whole class laugh because I will come up with this idea, but you guys came up with this idea. So you stole my joke.
Excrement.
Yeah, so it's not the toilet, it's the doo-doo, right? There we go.
Oh,
Haha,
yeah.
Still got the joke in there.
Oh, I like
All right.
the flies.
So yes, thank you, because I think that the children of the sinners are the flies. So here's why I like the idea. Just like the virus here, the excrement could be a threat to the body politic, right? If you don't expel it, this is gonna get really nasty here for a second. If you don't expel it though, there's like real harm. You can die from that. Your whole body can waste away because you've got too much waste. It's toxic and your body is sort of doing the work of figuring out what is toxic to it and needs to be expelled and what can be absorbed and what can like work for the body, right? And so there's this like process of expelling pushing out the sinners from society so that it is extra. And our culture, like we have so many rituals around, everyone, not just our culture, like human beings. Some of the earliest rituals we develop have to do with excrement, like where like some of the like earliest signs of human beings like evolving into actual communities and civilizations is by figuring out what they're going to do with excrement so that it's safe. And there's all sorts of rituals associated with it to get rid of it. So here we are in like Winthrop's sort of body politic or the Scarlet Letters, and they feel like that is going to be like the sinner is going to be a real threat to them, and they have to distinguish it from the rest of the body politic, right? Or the body politic is going to get sick and die. So there's like something about they can't be a part of that body politic anymore once you identify them as sinners. Okay, do you guys want to talk about any of the other labels here that you've got here? Any other connections you made that you're proud of, Kaylee?
We have the horse.
Yes.
Right. And we are very proud of this because they didn't think of them as people, but they still used them.
Yeah. I think that we get that a lot with Chillingworth and how he was like kidnapped by them, but just like hung out with them for a long time to learn their medicine and then kind of leaves them behind. There's that idea of use. Yeah, totally.
So we put ours as like the bones in your ears that like give you balance
Uh-huh.
because they're like not seen in the big picture, but then like they're kind of like key to the society in a way, and like they understand balance and like being in tune more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it kind of works similarly to the way that sinners work, where it's like you want to have a group, a person that you can define yourself against, or else the body politic might kind of fall apart. Yeah, Elsa? Yes.
Because it's kind of like the clergy dictates where you look. Oh no, it's not this way. This is here. This
It can
is
swivel you in what direction. I love that. And it is taking directions from God in your body politic to from which way to swivel, right? I like that a lot. How about you guys, religious officials and government officials as the classes? Josie?
We put it more like an eyes to, I guess, but it's like we had one on one eye and one on the other. Because during this time, I guess, like it wasn't secular, right? There was no separation of state and like church or whatever.
Right.
It was all like almost the exact same thing with like slight differences. They were both like heavily influenced with one another, and that's why they were like they're pretty much the same, but not quite.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you were to cut off one, the perspective and the peripheral vision completely goes for a while, right? And so it's like they have to work together. I like that a lot. Where else? Oh, religious officials up here in the mouth. This cute little guy. Why the mouth?
We put the mouth because ours, the brain is religion, I think.
Uh-huh.
And we were thinking like, in this ideal, the mouth should be only like godly things that are coming out of it. So
Awesome. Yeah, so they're like speaking for God too, right? And so they can tell sort of the rest of the body what's going on there. Okay. I want to look at one thing we're all missing a little bit. I mean, you've got God at the heart, so I think it kind of works, but we're missing like the ligaments that he talks about. Okay, good. Yeah, Matthew, say that again.
The ligaments are love.
Love, and it's love like for who? Like who loves who in this situation?
Everybody.
Everyone loves everyone. Yeah. So we've got the poor that are connected to doctors, that are connected to religion, that are connected to sailors. Wait,
Yeah, that's
not sinners in this one. But you've got all of these like ligaments that are connecting everybody together, right? Now, does Winthrop believe that because you love each other, you should be helping each other rise up through the body? So like we talked about how we have the poor down here in the bottom half, right? Does Winthrop believe that you should help out the poor so that they can get a leg up, so that they can rise up and they can become clergy someday, or they can become rich? No, he doesn't. Yeah, Elsa.
It's very confusing how it's done, but how I look at it is it's almost like he's justifying putting them below himself and other people, because like he's saying we'll help them just enough to be humane,
Yes.
but not enough to help them raise up a station. It's like with homeless people, yeah, we give them homeless shelters, but we're not like, oh, here's a house,
Yes.
you know?
Right. And
We're just
Winthrop would be
helping them
supportive of that.
just enough
Right.
that they're still functioning and giving us what they want without leaving their station.
Yes, exactly. So it's like the poor provide the rich with stuff, labor and all sorts of like goods and whatever. And then the rich can provide the poor just enough to keep them poor, but to keep them comfortable too. So it creates this idea of mutual need among everyone. Everyone relies on everyone else.
I
Josie?
think kind of going along with that, it's saying like they're like the poor, like an integral part of society.
Mm-hmm.
So even if like people might be like unhappy or discomforted, it's like, oh well, we need the poor to function. Is kind of his argument.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you help them? You need them, right? He's saying like, we need the poor, we need all this stuff, so that's why we wouldn't really choose it.
Right. It doesn't mean that you let them starve to death, because you need them and you need them to be alive and you need them to be satisfied with the body politic that they are living in. But he says the poor should not rise up against their superiors and shake off their yoke. And in this instance, the superiors are the rich. So they shouldn't shake off like the burden of being poor. That was their place. That's where they should stay. Addie?
Basically, like people, the reason what makes us people are key.
Yeah.
Thought, morals, and all that, but it's almost like it's so
It's a certain kind of equality, yeah.
and then he's like, I'm like, God, I know.
Right.
I just feel like he's like not preaching.
He's kind of saying that everyone is equal under the eyes of God in terms of everyone has equal amount of worth. Whether you were born rich or whether you were born poor, you are still valuable to God in this way, right? But not that they're equal in terms of opportunities or the way we think of equality now.
I'm just like so confused by it. I like didn't know what to take from it. To me, the first, I literally read it 4 times.
Uh-huh.
Like what? Because like the first time that I read it, like literally in all of my notes,
Uh-huh.
I say like where I said sounds like a cult.
Yeah, I mean Puritans, I think that's not that far off.
I go, sounds like a cult, and then I go, cult, period.
Yeah, because it's got that really strict hierarchy, right? Where you cannot challenge the person in charge at all. And the person in charge also speaks for the government, not just the religion.
Yeah, I'm just like so confused by it because it's like, go by what your morals are, but if your morals aren't this, then go to hell.
Yes, I think, yeah, I don't think you're confused. I think you get it. You just don't agree. Yeah. Yeah. Kaylee?
It's kind of a form of like pluralism in that, like, okay, everyone has their place and everyone's gonna work together within that place, but God said this is your place and you better not move.
Yes, and that's the part that's so important here. Remember how we talked about how the Puritans have this idea of predestination? We talked in this class about the difference between saved by works and saved by grace, right? So if they think that you are saved by grace, then they also think that your position in society is ordained by God. And he even uses that. He says, God Almighty in his most holy and wise providence hath so disposed of the condition of mankind, as in all times some must be rich, some poor, some high and eminent in power and dignity, others mean and in subjection. So he's like, that's the way God has decided you should have been born. So when you try and rise up, or you try and like throw off the yokes of poverty, you are defying where God decided you should be. Doesn't mean you should be unhappy. In fact, you should be very happy where you are. It just means you don't get a yacht, and that guy does, you know. Josie?
I feel like even though there's a lot of mentions of like quality and stuff, I think it's actually more focused on like coexistence and more on like balancing things out and less about like, oh, we're all equal, oh, we have, it's more just like we need to coexist with each other in
Yeah.
a certain way kind of thing.
Yes, and the way to coexistence is codependency. And it's a dependency where the rich depend on the poor so that the rich can do nice things for the poor and keep them happy, and the poor depend on the rich so that they can have nice things done to them. You know, do you see what I mean? It's like both sides need each other, not just for the society to work, but for their salvation to work. If you didn't have poor people, then there's nobody nice that the rich people can give charity to. And that's a problem. Yeah, Leah.
I wrote about that in my annotations too, like in the 3rd paragraph when they says that every man might eat of other. It was like a asymbiotic, like a relationship where poor people, even if they're poor, they keep the society running because they're doing the jobs that the rich won't do. And then the rich are contributing to them because they're funding the government, and the religious leaders are kind of like upholding the society.
Yeah.
So like I thought that was interesting that he noticed that there had to be like that give and take relationship.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me about it too is I think we're used to thinking of that as a concept. Like in our society, if you were to say, yeah, some people need to be poor and some people need to be rich, it's capitalism, you know? It's like we all agree on that. Where Winthrop gets kind of radical is when he's saying individually you can't change groups, like you belong in this group. That's so weird to me that like one of our founding members of American society, like this is like one of the very, very first people to come over from Europe, right? Was like not into what is the foundation of the American dream, which is all about upward mobility. You work hard, you get to rise up in status, you know, you get rewarded for it. And Winthrop is like, we don't want you to do that. Just stay where you are. I just think that's fascinating that he's one of the first, you know? Elsa?
It's kind of weird, but it reminds me of like past stuff.
Yeah.
Because they're always like, if you are so content and work really hard in education, you're like really poor, but then after you die, the next wife, maybe you'll come back with
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but the next life is heaven for Winthrop.
Yeah.
And everyone just needs to live the best in their station.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kaylee.
So I was looking at my answers and I was looking at the third paragraph on the second page where it says, for the persons and talks about being a community of Christ. And at the end it says, they used to love any of their own religion even before they were pleased with them. And I noticed that that's very much their attitude. Like, oh, if you're in my religion, then you're a part of my body politic. You're a part of my system, and I'll love you, and we'll have our codependent relationship thing.
Yeah.
But like the sinners, heck no, we don't love you. And like anyone who doesn't agree with them is basically just out of this whole body of love that they say they have.
Yes, and I think what's even a little bit more disturbing about it for me is that the way that the government and the religious authorities work together. So it's a body politic. It is also a body of Christ. It talks about it in this, that it is the body of Christ. And both of these work together to expel people from that so that you don't get to participate now anymore in the body of Christ. You can think of when he talks about the body of Christ, he's basically referring to a sacrament. So partaking in the body politic is your way to achieve grace, to achieve your spot in heaven. And so when you're kicked out of that body politic, like Hester is, you have to wear that A, you're not a part of us anymore. You don't get to go to heaven anymore either. Yeah.
I think one of the weirdest parts about this is like they went to America because I think this is really critical on their part is because everyone in Europe is like, your religion's weird and we're not letting you do that. And like, fine, we'll leave. And then when they get there, immediately they set up shop and go, whenever someone's like, hey, I don't really like this. Like, you're weird. Get lost.
Yeah, go to Rhode Island.
That's exactly what you did. Like,
Right.
Literally, like 8 months ago, we were the ones who were getting told to get out of town. Now we're like making people leave because they don't believe what we believe. Like,
Yeah.
It's really weird. Like, they were like, well, we must be right. Even though like everyone else in Europe, you guys are weird. Go.
I know, you'd think they'd have the empathy to be able to understand what that feels like to be in that position. But instead they were just like, no, we're right and you're wrong, was the problem from the beginning. It wasn't necessarily the freedom aspect of it, you know. And I'm not trying to preach like anti-Americanism or anything. I do think I am preaching anti-Puritanism. So if any of you are Puritans, I apologize. But yeah. Yeah, Josie.
Like, they're like that whole thing where it's like, it's more just religious freedom for themselves. And
Yes.
there's not like any religious freedom or any religious tolerance there. Because I know too, before the Puritans came to America, I think they went to like Sweden or Switzerland before.
Yeah.
And there was actual like real like religious freedom and tolerance and stuff where there was and the issue for them though is there's too much of an influence of other religions on themselves, and they thought, oh, the children are questioning things, so we gotta move.
Yeah.
So they were still really close compared to somewhere like, again, I don't know if it was Sweden or Switzerland, but somewhere up there where like there was actual like religious freedom.
Right.
In a lot of communities
But-
together.
But he wanted that concept that we get to at the very end, which is the most famous part of this speech, which is he wanted to be the city on the hill. He wanted to be separate from all these other places so that people could look unto this city on a hill and admire it for how well it runs. Okay, so from what I'm getting, like, it sounds like you're not super fond of this version of the body politic. Does anyone want to argue, though, that this was like a really good way to set up shop in a new world? Because I do think there's some things going on here. They lived in a monoculture. So if somebody does like go against what they believe, in order to maintain the integrity of their own religion, it's not like they just tried suddenly to make Orem, Utah a Puritan society, right? So it does make sense that the tight-knit quality of their community to kind of kick people out who don't fit that. Leah?
I feel like it was a good starting place for them because you're coming to a new world where there's not really any like structure, and it's not necessarily a good structure, but it was structure, and I
Yeah.
think that's how America really built off of itself, is through structures that maybe weren't so good, kind of like slavery. Like there was this structure of an owner and like the slaves, but they built America. Essentially, they built the economy.
Yeah.
So there was still that. So today I would think that, yeah, there could be, I think it was a good way to have a society to build off of.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to go back to that idea of mutual need too, that if you have a society that's coming where there isn't all that much difference between the rich and the poor and with the Puritans, you know, it's not like someone's Jeff Bezos and someone is me, you know, coming into the new world and I don't get to some of Jeff Bezos's money. It's not like that in this situation. It's like one guy has 3 bags of seed and another guy only has 1 bag of seed, you know, like it's not these extreme differences. So the inequalities among them is not going to be as harsh as maybe it would sound today. That being said, Hawthorne does not like this body politic. So this is kind of like where Hawthorne is coming from. When he writes about the Puritans in the Scarlet Letter, he's thinking about how Winthrop has set up this ideal society. And he's looking at all the ways that it might not work from an 1860 perspective. So he's in 1850 writing about 1642 and saying, there were some problems with that. So just as an informal discussion, talk to each other for 2 minutes. What do you think Hawthorne's criticism is of this body politic? And write down some of your notes about it on your picture of the body politic for me.
He doesn't like the idea of like, I guess like the classism that goes on and like the shunning that happens. I don't think he's really afraid to
I think that he's trying to say that the singers actually do contribute stuff. Look at how Esther, like, is actually providing, she's actually really great. She's giving to the poor, and she's like contributing a sense of service to the society.
I don't know, maybe like, I would agree. But also to be separation. Yeah, like even if I made a mistake, like I should have shown that, like kind of make sin in every way.
But like, think about it, you're still a cell. What you answer is still a cell, but it's like
Once I get rid of the shit spends on my century, I'll be like, yeah, okay, go. And it's just my right leg. Like, I'm gonna keep trying to like get really mad.
Is it getting better?
I got a little worse. Like, I was
you know, it kind of feels like their judgment has been unfair and that they shouldn't have this kind of power.
when you do a rewrite, you have to like redo the entire thing. You just like take the main idea from like pass it on.
Yeah, so the way that I do it, I don't see the point in rewriting it from scratch, but I will look at every sentence and try and make it as good as it can be, because I won't comment on all of the issues in the paragraph. So you can kind of like take my comments and think about them and then apply it to the paragraph as it is.
Yeah, which is a part of society. Which is because it's Puritan.
Okay, I'm gonna cut this discussion off for a second. So I want you now open up a couple pages earlier to the Scarlet Letter excerpt 3, the one that says conclusion. And you're gonna find the paragraph that starts, "Nothing was more remarkable." It's on the second page of it at the bottom. All right, with the same people you were working with, I want you to read through that paragraph together. And based on that paragraph, I think this is where we find Hawthorne's main criticism of this body politic. So based on that paragraph, come up with some ideas, write them down about what Hawthorne's main criticism was. Okay, go for it. All right, so what did you feel was Hawthorne's big problem with the body politic based on this paragraph that offers a critique of Chillingworth? Luke?
I kind of feel like that is he's criticizing that your only purpose is religion. You should only focus on God.
Okay, so he's not super loving this idea that focus is on God and nothing else. I think that's a part of it. What else seems to be a criticism he has? Lexi?
I think another thing is that everything is entirely dependent on each other.
Yes.
Like if one thing goes down, everything's going down.
Yes. He hates this idea of dependency. That is the main issue that he has. What does he say is the, oh, Jane, yeah.
Just to say that he doesn't like how Hester was cast out so easily, but when Dimmesdale literally admitted everything, people were still like, it's fine. He didn't say anything. It was by the doctor. The doctor did it.
Yeah, so in the next paragraph too, so he starts with this idea that dependency is the bad thing, right? And in the next paragraph too, he talks about how Pearl inherited all of Chillingsworth's money after he died. So Pearl becomes the richest person in the new world. And suddenly the community is like, welcome back, Pearl, we love you. You know, so it's like this kind of arbitrary idea then that you're going to forgive some things and punish other things, but it is also that arbitrariness is still based on what he hates most, which is this idea of dependency. What does he say is the same, like the similarity between love and hate? Haley?
I think it kind of calls them both a form of obsession and like dependency. Like
Yeah.
if you hate something, you're gonna need contact with it in order to renew that hatred. Just as if you're like in love with someone, you want to spend more time with them. If you hate someone, you're also gonna spend more time at least thinking about them and spend just as much energy on both.
Right. And so this idea that everyone is connected through the ligaments, through love, like Hawthorne doesn't like that idea. He doesn't want everybody to be connected through ligaments. And part of the problem is because God is up here, the religious and the government all are up here that are sort of the mouthpieces for God. And there seems to be a kind of barrier between God and religion and the people down below. Right? So that if you didn't have the religious authorities, nobody else has a relationship to God. And that makes them all dependent on each other, but mostly even more dependent on the people in charge, the authorities that tell people what to do. Lucy?
I think that he hates it because people can be friends.
Yes.
So he kind of like portrayed that with different.
Right. And even Chillingworth, who could have been like, I mean, he was a pretty cool dude before all this happened. It seemed like, I mean, he was old and he was like, you know, I wouldn't want to be married to him, but he was like interesting. He went and lived with Native Americans to learn about medicine. Like he has something that makes his physical body different. And yet, because he becomes a part of this society, he becomes dependent on others. And as soon as that dependency is taken away, he wastes away. Aaliyah?
So you said something about like the love and hate,
Yeah.
the difference between them. Well, when I was reading the paragraphs, it like stuck out to me. It was the two passions are essentially the same, except that one happens to be seen in the celestial radiance and the other in the dusky and blurred glow.
Yeah.
So I think he's pointing out like the difference between where you put your like essentially your focus and your energy. So when he said focus on God and nothing else, like the way that that what's his name? Dimmesdale focused on God in the end.
Yeah.
And then in the way that Chillingsworth focused on like hatred, it still ended for him. So I think that his overall idea is focusing on one thing that's gonna drain you.
Yeah, a kind of obsession with something. And it turns you into a dependent person too. Okay, last comment on this. Elsa?
Also, dependency
emotional education and those types of things if we don't have our basic needs met.
Mm,
So once his thing that he turned into his basic was taken away, he wasn't able to focus like he was able to do anything else after that. He could focus.
yeah, because he had only focused on that one, the bottom of the pyramid, and hadn't gotten any sort of self-actualization, which is at the top of the pyramid, right? Absolutely. Hawthorne is obsessed with individuality. We're gonna move on from Hawthorne now. The Scarlet Letter, we're kind of done with it. Tomorrow we'll talk about it a little bit, but like we're moving on. I have to tell you, we'll come back to it for a short essay in a few weeks, but for now, we're going to be talking about what's called transcendentalism. So here is your homework assignment. Okay, this part is the part to listen to very carefully. So under the module for next time, you're going to find something called Transcendental Literature Review 1. You're going to read that assignment so carefully. You're going to read every part of it. I made it so clear. I think after 6 years of doing this, I've made it clear. And then there is an assignment on there called Transcendental Summary Example. And you're going to look at that example and you can follow it exactly in terms of how it should be laid out. So look at the double spacing and there's some layout things. So I've got an example there. The example I have is about Winthrop. So you'll be familiar with what I'm writing about so that you can kind of understand what I want you to do. So these literature review assignments, they are basically long summaries. So I think I said 2 pages for these. 2 pages double spaced. You are going to choose something to read in the pink pages of your packet. It mostly goes in chronological order. So older stuff at the beginning up to brand new stuff. Brand new being like 2 years ago at the end. So you can kind of choose where you want to go. You're going to read that essay. And then you're going to write a summary of what the arguments were in that essay. So when you write a summary, it's totally neutral. You're not saying, oh, here's how he was persuasive. You're not saying whether you liked it or not. You are just saying, here is what his argument was. And the hard part about that is that there will be both explicit arguments where they have a clear thesis, but there will also be implicit arguments. And you're trying to tell me what the implicit arguments are. So we've been practicing this so far, like every day. When we look at metaphors and we're like, what does this metaphor mean? That is us finding the implicit argument. Or when we put up the body politic and try and figure out exactly what Winthrop is saying about the relationship between the two, that's the implicit argument, right? So when you write the summary, try to be as precise and detailed as you can with what the argument is. I'm hoping with the example and everything, this is going to be a breeze. And you can always do rewrites if it's not. So who has questions? Yeah, Jane?
Did we just read one of these things?
Yep, one of them, whichever one sounds most interesting to you. Yeah. I will say, some of the older ones are easier to write summaries about because they're more straightforward with the argument, but they're harder to read. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. And this is due next time, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, yes, I want your body politic. So go put that in the drawer for me. And then who was in Callie's group? It was just the 3 of you? Yeah, you're good. Do your best on that summary. I know that it's short notice, so just do your best and you can always work on it later again. Gracie.